start out staying on the theme of the nominating process. We are still in this amazing presidential nominating battle, at least on the Democratic side. Obviously, the Republicans resolved their battle with Governors Sununu early. And they did it mainly because, well, New Hampshire, your state, but also because of their rules, the winner take all, versus the Democratic Party's, Democrats would argue, much fairer system of proportional representation. It's so fair it's become unfair. That's one difference between the parties. How do you view this nominating process? What are the problems with it? And do you believe there ought to be any changes? Say Governor Sununu moving that Granite State out of first position. I know that you favor that, getting rid of New Hampshire as the first primary.
God won't let you do that. We had a very interesting discussion about this at dinner, so a lot of this I'm going to repeat what I told my dear friends up here, and I'm kind of used to a dinner now, but there are three dear friends here. I think people don't understand that the nominating process, the primary process, really should demand of our citizens an equal commitment to the election process as the general election. And I think what makes New Hampshire very different is that I'm not a native of New Hampshire. I grew up in New York. I came to New Hampshire a little over 30 years ago. But it is a very different state. We have 400 people in the state legislature. Most of our money is raised locally so that every board of selectmen, every school board is one that can affect your pocketbook. Every election in New Hampshire is every 2 years, except of course the federal elections. And that means every 2 years, 3,000 or 4,000 people are elected that can affect your pocketbooks, which means 6,000 or 8,000 run. There's a winner and a loser. And in a state of 1 million, it means that over your lifetime, virtually you, your spouse, or one of your neighbors has run for office. And I know that's not an exaggeration. People tithe their time in the volunteer offices of a community. It is tremendously involved. And that's why people love their politics. So the primary process in New Hampshire isn't just going to the election where you're going to cast your vote on election day. It is a commitment by the citizens to be part of the process. They attend the coffees and the events not only of their own candidate, but of the opposition. And sometimes they change their minds in the process. This time around, over 75% of the New Hampshire electorate turned out for the primary. That's commitment. I look at other states scrambling to change the date and, oh, we want to be early. But you look at the returns that most of them get, 10, 12, 13%. They don't understand that it is more than just changing a date. Now, yes, I am very partial to New Hampshire, but I suggest to you that if you want to replace New Hampshire, you ought to replace it with at least an equivalent state. Somebody in which a candidate can come in without too much money and begin to get some political traction on the national scene. Someone who can talk face-to-face with citizens that have serious questions and who will communicate the concerns that they have. And someone, and a state, if you want to replace it with a state where you're going to get a real turnout and you are reflecting the commitment of citizens to the process. Now, Iowa has a very similar process. They have the caucus process that takes place early. Let me remind you, Iowa picks corn, New Hampshire picks presidents.
You can go back and run for governor. No question for you.
Now, on the overall primary process, I really think everybody thought it was great to be first, and you had this front-end loading. I personally think that you're going to see people look at Pennsylvania and Indiana and in Carolina and Oregon and say, oh my God, they're going to make maybe the final decision. Maybe it's good to be last. The point is that people have to understand that every component in the process is significant. Sometimes you get rid of early, clean out the chaff early. Sometimes you clean out the second layer in the next round of primaries. And sometimes you are there for sorting out between the last two. I personally think that the best way to handle it is to modify some of the crazy rules that one of the parties adopted but don't make dramatic changes. Let the struggle go on. Let the states think that they have expectations to being very influential and change their dates for a while, and they will discover that an orderly process is best for everyone, and I think you'll see people sort down to a calendar that makes some sense. Doesn't mean it's going to happen in the next cycle, but I suspect within 1 or 2 cycles, sanity will return to the system.
Well, we'll hope. And Governor Weicker, Governor Wilder, who actually participated in the system to a degree in a presidential election year, what's your view on this?
Well, I've almost come 180 on this issue of how to select a presidential candidate. I very much was in favor of going to the primary system that we now have. The brokered convention got a bad name for whatever reasons. But the fact also remains that some great presidents were selected through that system. Whether it was Franklin Roosevelt, whether it was Dwight Eisenhower, great candidates on the Republican side like Wendell Willkie, Tom Dewey, Adlai Stevenson on the Democratic side. It was not a bad system in terms of the people that were selected. But I felt that it was important that everybody have a say. Okay, maybe that's so. But what's been the effect? Absolutely obscene quantities of money spent on this process. So I have to question as to whether this has been a good thing, whether or not there might be some middle ground between the brokered convention and primary. I think that middle ground probably is executing on primaries within town committees and state committees rather than throwing it open as it is now. You have got to do away with the millions, hundreds of millions being spent on the process, which millions are spent because the time period is so long. And I would hope that the middle ground can be found that we all in the present system we're under. I think money is destroying politics in the United States.